Hello, and welcome to Self-Care is Sexy. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host. We're a weekly podcast that's here to generate and share self-care ideas with each other. Last week, I brought you a really cool interview that I did with Erica Ancien from Ancien Wellness. We met through the hashtag Self-Care is Sexy on Instagram, and I had to have her on the show. I loved her energy, and she's just amazing. Now, normally I interview people that I meet, friends I know, or people that are suggested to me by other listeners, or folks who have, reached out to me and they have a self-care story they want to tell. But it's COVID outside, and organic interaction is really far and few between these days. So thankfully, she and I were both open enough to do the interview together, even though we'd never met. And, I'm really glad that we did, friends, because she is such a powerhouse of positivity. And she really cares about her clients finding their total wellness. And not only just their fitness goals, but that overall mind, body, and soul type of wellness. Now, if you missed that show last week, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, Podbean, PodNation, and really anywhere you get your podcasts from, including our website, www.selfcareissexy.com. And make sure you check Erica out on Instagram. Follow the link in her bio to sign up for a free wellness consultation, because radical self-care includes getting some wellness coaching from the experts who know how to work with you wherever you're at in your own personal journey. So thanks again, Erica, for joining me. I want to give you a quick preview of what to expect from today's show. Now, this episode today is not what you might be used to with our podcast. Today, we're going over 10 different not-so-sexy self-care ideas for you. Because sometimes self-care is not sexy at all. Sometimes it's ugly, gritty work that unearths some real dark shit that we need to know how to deal with so that we can move forward and evolve. And although it's not pretty, it's also a type of self-care too. So it's not all bubble baths and extra sleep today. We're going to be talking about the not-so-sexy self-care work that needs to be done. But first, a few quick housekeeping notes. Okay, so for today's show, I want to address a little bit deeper self-care content. Now, this came up after a session that I had with my therapist, and I was like, why am I not talking about this on my podcast? And before I move on, if you're laughing or judging because I see a therapist, you need to check yourself. Because my mental health is a priority, and I know how valuable these professionals are. And if you don't have a therapist, don't knock it. I mean, seriously, they went to school for 8+ years to get to know, the ins and outs of the mind and how to work with people and help people. And if you're being resistant to the idea of seeing a therapist, or think it's only valuable when you're in crisis, you are sadly mistaken. And after this year's chaos and craziness, I highly recommend that you find a professional you can talk about your problems with and get professional advice on how to work with them. And it's important to find a good one that matches your style. So during a recent session with my therapist, we were talking about inner work and about uncovering the parts of ourself that need the healing, that need to be addressed, but that aren't immediately obvious. And so we talked about digging in and trying to find the parts that we really can't see immediately for ourselves. And that, usually leads to ugly ass crying and super not sexy self-care. And I stopped her and I wrote down a bunch of the stuff we had talked about, because I know if on my self-care journey, trying to learn how to take care of myself, that somebody else in the world could benefit from what I just learned. And so this is why I wanted to share with you today. Now, if you're new to my show, first of all, I want to welcome you to the podcast and thank you so much for joining us. But I kind of want to prepare you a little bit and let you know that yes, normally normally this is a super positive show that talks about self-care products and wellness coaching and all that really happy stuff. But we're also a real life show that talks about real self-care. And we talk about how, it's not always easy. And we talk about, what happens when you don't take the time to do self-care. And how that can sometimes turn us into like not so sexy people. So today we're going to go over some self-care ideas that are not sexy at all, but are completely necessary and effective. So I've got 10 acts of self-care that are not sexy, but that need to get done. All right, number 1, I want you to fail. No, that's right. You heard me correctly. I want you to fail as an act of self-care. Now, believe me, I know how it sounds, but hear me out. I imagine you're probably spinning a ton of plates and trying to balance, what you've got going on for yourself, your goals that you're trying to reach, the responsibilities of your family, your job. Maybe you're going through a difficult time right now, having lost a job, maybe having lost a loved one, and there's grief going on. And there's a lot of spinning plates in the air that you're constantly going back and forth and juggling. And I want you to, as an act of self-care, I want you to fail. I want you to allow yourself to drop a plate and to let a responsibility slip through the cracks. And I want you to get good at failing where the pressure seems insurmountable and you have to let something go. There's this sort of cathartic release that happens when you fail on purpose and you say to yourself, you know what, there's too much going on. I can't live up to this perfectionistic standard of getting it all done every day. I need to let something go. I need to let something break and something fail. And this is not a sexy, attractive act of self-care, right? This is going to take a lot of humbling. It's going to take a lot of letting go of expectations and breaking away from the judgments of what other people are going to think about you for letting a responsibility fail. And I know this sounds like really challenging work, and it is, because if you've set a goal, if you've had these responsibilities, letting go of them are not going to be easy or fun or at all sexy, but it is absolutely necessary for your well-being and mental health. Number 2, the people pleasing is killing you. So it's time to stop doing it. And we've talked about people pleasing on the show a lot, but I'm going to hit this home as many times as I possibly can. If you Googled or searched for a podcast about self-care and you somehow organically, randomly stumbled upon my show, it is probably because taking care of yourself is not your default modus operandi. It is not a priority to you, and you're reaching out for help. And I'm super proud of you, and I'm super encouraging you to listen to other episodes to give you some ideas on how to break free from the people pleasing, because it is killing you, and it's not sexy. Who cares what others want from you right now? You've got to stop trying to make other people happy, because trying to do things for other people and living your life in a manner that makes others happy is a really disjointed and misguided purpose. And what you're actually doing is avoiding your own work and trying to make yourself feel better by doing esteemable things for other people. And the real esteem and the real confidence that you're looking for, you're going to find by doing these kinds of things for yourself. But if you're constantly running around trying to make the people around you happy, trying to keep everything calm and good and make sure that everybody else is taken care of first, you're going to miss the mark on yourself. And you're not doing a very good service to the other people around you, because you're not giving them the opportunity to figure out how to make themselves feel better. And that's a huge part of self-care. It's not a sexy act to break away from these patterns that we've held for a really long time. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of mental rehearsing and practicing, but it is necessary if you want to have a better, more connected relationship with yourself and carry yourself in a more confident, sexy, positive manner. Number 3, I need you to face the ugly truth that you not being able to do self-care is your own fault because you are in charge of you. And self-care is truly the act of intentionally managing yourself. And you're going to have to really sit with that. And it's not sexy. You have to start blaming other people for not being able to get the me time that you so desperately want. And you have to stop blaming other people and face that ugly truth that if you are not feeling in control of your life, if you feel like you do everything for everybody else, but you don't get a second to yourself, that you are responsible for that. And maybe that pattern is serving you somehow. And that is the act of self-care that is not so sexy that I want you to sit with and go through. What is it that you're clinging to that makes making not being able to do self-care everybody else's fault? What is the benefit of doing that? Because there is a benefit to that. And uncovering it is going to get you further in your self-care journey. It's going to heal a lot of the past traumas, and it's going to get you out of that cycle of constantly, saying, "Oh, I would do self-care. I would get that me time if only so and so would let me, or if I didn't have this and this and this to do." And the truth that you need to face and sit with is that you're not doing it because you're not making it a priority. Is it more important to do the dishes today, or is it more important to sit with yourself and work on these self-care items and journal about them and go through them and really face that ugly truth and stop making it everyone else's fault that you can't get time to yourself? And again, that's not a very sexy self-care trick, right? That is some work. That is some real facing the music kind of stuff. And you can do that through journaling. You could talk to somebody that you trust about it and say, "Hey, do you think this is happening to me? Do you think I'm doing this? Have you seen examples of this?" You can look for a therapist and strike up that conversation and get the professional advice to figure out, is that something that needs addressing for your own journey? Number 4, self-abandonment. Now, a very not sexy act of self-care is learning about your own self-abandonment. Now, this is some deep work, and if you've never addressed it before, it's going to be uncomfortable. But let's talk about this real quick. If you come from a family of origin that's toxic or dysfunctional, and you never really learned the skill of self-soothing and managing your own emotions, and have an abandonment pattern in your early years, that's from 1 to 7 years old. You experienced abandonment, neglect, any kind of traumatic experiences in the younger years. What happens is you end up repeating them in your adult life, even though there's no need to. You create that pattern again and again and again because it's familiar to you. And this was a difficult conversation to have. Again, it is not a sexy bubble bath or pedicure or massage type of self-care practice. The practice of looking at your own self-abandonment and looking at that pattern in your adult life is difficult to face. And if you're not very sure what I'm talking about, if you're really lost in the weeds here, I want to give you a very specific example. So let's say in your younger years, between 1 and 7 years old, your father left and you were left alone in the house, or he left, there was no explanation, and there was an abandonment that happened. So literally you're abandoned at a very young age, and the uncertainty of where has daddy gone and what's going to happen next, and now mommy's sad, or any kind of childhood abandonment that you may have experienced. You know, you go along in your adult life